Okay, so this is where we stopped in the last video clip, and in the subsequent live interaction, I also made a remark that given that this is the tripartite structure of the course, we will be first covering the theories, or we will approach the theories in professional ethics or ethics in general, and then go to the examples as well as codes. So the first theory that's sort of lined up in front of me is called deontology, which is a study of the notion of permissibility. That's the dictionary meaning. But along with that, contrasting deontology, we also have two other major theories. Each of these have a long history in philosophy. So we have deontology as opposed to utilitarianism, and we have a completely different perspective on ethics coming from virtue theories, which dates back to 500 or 200 BC, at the time of the ancient Greeks. Utilitarianism goes back to the British philosopher John Stuart Mill's era, along with the British philosopher Jeremy Bentham. So it has got around 200 years of history, but it also takes its cues from the ancient Epicurean. And deontology, the one that we are going to first look at, goes all the way back to 18th century to a particular an almost legendary philosopher named Immanuel Kant. Okay, so before we start to unpack the details of deontology, let's get into what we traditionally understand as human judgment. So we all know that there are subjective as well as objective sides to judgments, objective aspects to judgments. Now there could be judgments that are completely subjective to the deepest roots of human subjectivity, something like I like a masala dosa, or I like this drink, or I like this particular song. Okay, these are couched in subjective elements, and nobody's really going to question you as to why do you like that, or why don't you like something else. Okay, it's about our subjectivity, and it's about our autonomy. But as we move along this spectrum, we have other comparative judgments, such as Tom Hanks is a better actor than Russell Crowe, or Virat Kohli is a better batsman than, say, Joe Root or someone else, etc., etc. Now here, it's not a case about our deepest subjectivity. I mean, there is, or possibly there is, a set of heuristics or rules based on which we can rank people. Okay, because both of them are actors in this example, and if we are talking about Virat Kohli or someone else, then we are talking about a particular format of game. Okay, now as we again head to the right hand side of the spectrum, we have got judgments such as cheating is morally unacceptable, or stealing is bad, or etc., and so on and so forth, or we should treat people who are suffering, etc. Now what sort of judgments are they? Are they subjective or are they objective statements or judgments? So most of the traditional understanding is that moral principles and that sort of guide us in deciding what is right or what is wrong are neither too subjective nor completely objective. Okay, So they are, in a certain sense, they are part of this gray area between subjective judgments and objective judgments. And as we move along to the completely objective side, we have got scientific statements of the sort, where we discuss, say for example, Earth is moving around the sun, water is H2O, or Roper is situated north of Delhi. These are objective statements independent of any conditions. Okay, there are no conditions here. They are true independent of human beings. Water will remain H2O independent of human beings. Roper will be north of Delhi, at least if we understand the naming, or at least we understand the position of those two places, independent of human beings. Okay, but if we label something like, here is an individual A who has cheated in this particular financial transaction, and it was morally bad, will that be an objective judgment independent of human beings? Okay, will there be morality independent of human beings, or independent of some sort of intersubjectivity? I think you have got a rough idea of what this traditional understanding means. Okay, the traditional understanding of human judgment means that moral judgments and statements pertaining to morality fall within this gray area between objectivity and subjectivity. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, there's also another traditional understanding. This is known as the fork of knowledge, and the fork of knowledge was introduced by a predecessor of Immanuel Kant, named David Hume, the British historian and philosopher David Hume, who claimed that, and this was there even before, but then he sort of coined it in a nice set of descriptions. So he says that there are a sharp, if we take for example the entire set of statements belonging to human knowledge, it can be nicely divided, sharply divided between those sets of statements that arise out of reason or rational thinking, and those sets of statements that arise out of experience. Okay, so just take any knowledge scenario that you have. Okay, second law of thermodynamics. How did we arrive at that? And the answer would be that we arrived at that through experience. Okay, and there are mathematical, algorithmic truths, logical truths. We don't really need experience to go after mathematics, okay, or mathematical truths. We need our reason. Okay, so a mathematician wouldn't venture out of his seat, okay, or his armchair to sort of experientially validate his knowledge claims or her knowledge claims, whereas a scientist will have to do that. And within science also there are abstract areas where you don't really need experience to prove something as true. Okay, so the first traditional understanding is about subjectivity and objectivity. The second one is about knowledge. And in the first one, we said probably that according to our understanding, moral truths or statements about moral judgments, they are part of a gray area between subjectivity and objectivity, because independent of the species of human beings, we may not have morality. That's the traditional understanding. Okay, now in here we say that all of our knowledge can be divided either as arising from reason, rational deliberation, or experience. Okay, so you might want to take any statement and see how did we arrive at that. Okay, a mathematical statement or even an empirical statement. Okay, and in some cases we may need both aspects. Like we may be using some formulas which we arrived through reason, but then we may apply that to our experiences. Okay, physics is another example where we have both mathematics and the experiences from nature gelled together. Okay, so we have both reason and experience contributing to our knowledge. Now in comes Immanuel Kant, and his startling claims are this, that moral judgments are objective and universal. Okay, so the entire corpus of moral philosophy, moral truths, they are part of the extreme objective side that we discussed. Say for example, similar to 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, or water is H2O. So similar to scientific and mathematical truths. In fact, he claims that these are more equivalent to mathematical truths, abstract truths. And therefore, he also labels them as rational pieces of truths, rational knowledge. Okay. Now, why is he saying this? There is a particular reason for that. He believes that morality is arrived independent. There is almost an absolutely realistic stance for moral truths, meaning independent of human beings. I mean, you might just want to ask, would 2 plus 2 amount to 4 even if the entire human species is extinct? The answer is yes, it will be 4. It will remain 4 for any extraterrestrial species. In the same way, he believes that moral knowledge and moral truths are independent of any species. Okay, it's sort of extra it's sort of extra humane, which means it will be there even if we are not there. It will be there as universal laws. Okay, so imagine other species thinking about morality, and they will also get into universal laws such as cheating is bad, or we should not break our promises, or we should not lie, etc., etc. Okay, and this leads us to one of his major distinctions that he highlighted in his work, and this is about the difference between hypothetical imperatives and categorical imperatives. Okay, so imagine yourselves engrossed in a particular work. Okay, say for example a painting, or enjoying a piece of music, where you are doing that action for not any particular result. Okay, so hypothetical imperatives is basically just the opposite of that, where we have a means and ends outlook to the whole fact of executing some action. Okay, to the whole engagement in some action. So for example, I ask students, why are you here? I mean, why are you doing this BTech course? And the answer is, I mean, many of them just say that we could never grasp, it just happened as part of a flow, so we were not in control in a certain sense. But many of the others also say that I'm here, I mean, because of my independent thought, I wanted to be here, and that will lead me to a better life, or that will lead me to securing a job, or getting good money, or getting another academic position, etc., etc. So these are hypothetical imperatives. Okay, and in all those interactions, I was searching for at least a person who would give me this answer in a categorically imperative way, such as, I am here because for the worth of studying. Okay, I just enjoy studying, and I want to be here for its own sake. Okay, so I'm not really worried about the results. I'm not worried about what will yield after the course, but I am just enjoying and going through the process. Okay, that's an almost almost categorically imperative way of answering why are we studying. Okay, but if we say that it gives me pleasure, then that's not a proper categorically imperative way of assessing this action. Because pleasure means that there is something coming out of it. But if you're engrossed in something, say for example a small child painting a picture, okay, he or she may not be doing it for money, may not be doing it for anything else, but just for the creative enhancement that he or she gets out of it. So when you, say for example, read a theorem and study a theorem, say in physics or in mechanics, we as a categorically imperative moral agent, we should be saying this, that, oh, I just want to know how the world works, and I just would like to go through this process of understanding nature. Okay, and that gives me value. Okay, so the job itself, whatever it is, okay, it has got its own worth. So we do it for its own worth, not for something else. Okay, this might have already rang bells about Eastern traditions, because in Eastern traditions also we have similar schools where they say we do something for its own sake, not for something else. Okay, and so here I have sort of say paraphrased it in this way, that doing X for Y is a hypothetical imperative, whereas doing X for X, or X for its own sake, its own value, that's a categorical imperative. Okay.